Welcome to Faith at Work. I'm Lisa Beardsley. We're going to be exploring how faith is at work in ordinary ways and in very surprising ways. Our first guest is Dr. Leonard Bailey. Dr. Leonard Bailey is the chair of the Department of Surgery at Loma Linda University. And 20 years ago, he was catapulted to international attention with the surgery he did with Baby Fae. 20 years ago. It's hard to believe. I remember I was living in Finland at that time, 1984, and picking up the newspaper and seeing on the television news about Loma Linda University, about you and what you were doing with Baby Fae.
Oddly enough, a lot of people can remember what they were doing when they heard about Baby Fae. It's one of those marker issues around the world.
That's right. Even when I travel, I was just traveling for the university this past week, and somebody asked me something about Loma Linda University, and they remembered Baby Fae, and most are surprised it was 20 years ago.
I encounter that wherever I go around the world, it seems. It was an historic event for Loma Linda, as you're well aware, and an important one, I think. And an important one for the evolution of transplantation in young infants and newborns.
Why was that so important for where we are today with infant heart transplant?
Well, newborn babies have been largely left out of the transplant equation. Either surgeons were afraid to operate on newborns, or they didn't feel organs would ever be available for them. But it occurred to me in my training period that the newborn immune system, a newborn baby, would be really an ideal environment for transplantation if we just come to terms with getting it done. One way to start the ball rolling was to organize the possibility of long-term survival with allografts, and then short of allografts to find some other donor, our species or some other species, that would provide some promise for babies who are otherwise doomed to die. I often thought
Was there a point in time which you thought that it might work to use the heart from another, from the baboon?
Oh, sure.
To keep a child alive for the rest of its life, or did you think that that would just be a temporary measure?
No, I think it's a strong possibility it could work for a long time, many years. We have data in primates since Baby Fae with survival out beyond 2 years in cross-species transplant. That's with a heart that's actually a working heart in the chest. I think that it's potentially would be something good for the long term. There are a whole lot of issues presently that conflict with our going forward with cross-species transplantation of solid organs, at least. The FDA has asked us not to even submit an application until we get more information about the possibility of disease transfer between species. And so a lot of work is being done in that area right now. Others are fearful of using subhuman primates as donors, and so a lot of money and effort have been gone into using barnyard animals such as a pig as a potential donor source.
That's right, and certainly pig heart valves are still used. Why are people have so much resistance to primates being used? Well,
I don't know exactly why that might be, particularly with baboons who are ubiquitous around the globe. There are many of them. They're not endangered, and they can be bred for this purpose if need be. But we have a soft side in society, soft with regards to our approach to animals. I'm one of those. Mm-hmm. It is a trade-off, and I think we have to be sensitive to that issue. But it looks as though it'll be a while before we're able to go forward with solid organ transplants. There are a couple of cell transplant, cross-species cell transplant protocols that are in play. Baby Fae was a grand experiment. Unfortunately, we never got a chance to go forward with another one like her, or maybe 3 or 4 like her, so we could actually play it out. Not everything went perfectly with her management, particularly post-operatively, and it may have contributed to her death, and likely did. But if we'd had the ability to go forward with several more, I'm sure we could have worked through those issues.
We have some footage from that time. Let's see what it was like 20 years ago when we went to that surgery. While we're waiting for that footage to come, you were trained as a surgeon, and all of a sudden you're thrust before hundreds of microphones. We had the media camped out here on the university from all over. What was that experience like to have to give press conferences?
Well, it was, I suppose it was something we had to do, and I looked at it as part of the obligation of pushing the envelope a little.
Well, here we are. This is the actual surgery itself, 20 years ago.
Well, look at that. I haven't even seen this. But I do remember the day.
What do you remember about that day?
It was like, in many ways, it was a day like every other day. I was able to get up early in the morning, come down here and go to work and do what I've been trained and blessed to have talents to do. I had no doubt that day that we would be able to get Baby Fae to survive the surgical procedure and go forward. We had done it hundreds of times in the laboratory. We knew what we were doing.
You'd done it with baby goats hundreds of times.
Yeah, many of them. We hadn't done it for this particular anatomic indication before. This was an era when all these babies died. That's changed now. And we seldom transplant a baby for this diagnosis today.
So is the surgery over that we just saw now when they were lifting her?
It's just like that. I hate for you to think it's that easy. Everybody'd want to do it, but it went perfectly. We were richly blessed through that experience, and we were able to keep our eye on the baby early. We had a lot of distractions around. Fortunately, we had a lot of people that threw themselves at the distractions, answered the calls, answered the questions, met the press, and did all that. So that some of us that are devoted to taking care of the baby could do that. The notoriety piece of it has never really impressed me very much, and to this day. It, I suppose, comes with the territory, but it's certainly nothing to go seeking. It's a great impediment in your life, and it hasn't been in mine at least.
Hasn't been an impediment.
Well, we had a whole lot of issues that evolved out of that experience that were not particularly pleasant for our personal lives.
Well, here we are back. She's coming out of surgery into recovery, it looks like. So the feeling overall in the surgical suite was pretty euphoric. Things had gone just like they were supposed to.
Just as we had hoped, and within about 36 hours or so, she didn't require the ventilator machine any longer. Her neurological recovery was good. Her kidneys were working well. Heart was gangbusters, of course. She had been barely surviving when we took her to the operating room, and to see that transformation is really part of the larger spiritual piece of what we do in transplantation.
Say a little bit more about that.
Well, it's easy to say. Baby Fae is just one example of many hundreds since her, or other examples of what reminds me on a daily basis that God is compassionate. He's in charge of our lives, and He's a warm and personal God, one that we can rely on heavily for our day-to-day activities. In my industry, you sort of have to live a life of prayer continuously. You get up in the morning and your life is, you need to connect up with every conscious moment. And the transplant business reaffirms that regularly. Example, when we fly out to, say, New York or Nova Scotia and take an organ out of a baby who's died and get in the airplane and fly back here to Southern California with that heart and a vat of cold salt water for maybe 8 or 10 hours, and we stitch it in a dying baby on this end and expect that baby to do well. That's a miracle.
It is a miracle.
By anybody's standards. When the heart starts, it's not anything we've done, quite frankly. It's what the Creator put in place for us to do. And it's a rich spiritual experience each time it happens.
And here she is, eating quite hungrily and quite eagerly.
I think from time to time how it would have changed things if she had been able to survive our first experiment and even perhaps be alive today. What an interesting array of social and ethical issues that we would be dealing with today. Her legacy, however, is really what it's all about.
And you had that pleasure about 4 years ago at the gala, Little Hearts for Big Hearts, in which many of the children, the infants that you had done heart transplant surgeries on, were brought together, and you were invited to the platform. What was that like, to be surrounded by all these little people, and some even teenagers now, who are alive because of heart transplants?
It's such a rich feeling, it's hard to express it. It really is something that touches your heart, your mind in ways that we don't have a language for, in my view. An example, 2 days ago, one of the early babies that we transplanted as a newborn celebrated her 18th birthday up in the Northwest. I almost had a chance to get up there and surprise her, but I sent her a telegram. And 2 weeks ago I was in Montreal, and one of the early babies and newborns that we did up there, Geneviève Brisson. I've been asked to travel around a bit and talk about the 20th anniversary of Baby Fae and the legacy from that. And in the evening festivities, a meal that we had in a club up in Montreal, I walked in, and who was standing there but Geneviève? And she's about to be 17 years old in a couple of days. She's finishing high school this year. She's already won some prizes in this industry of television. She plans to be an actress. She's going to start the University in Arts and Theater next year. An exciting, wonderful kid. And I got to sit between she and her mom, another prize on this planet, a great woman, Anne-Marie, and enjoy an evening meal with those two. And I thought while I was sitting there, what a tragedy it would have been if Geneviève weren't part of this world. And then if you cast back of all the thousands of babies born with hypoplastic left heart syndrome that just perished because we didn't have this kind of technology available to them, it's heartbreaking.
I do have a picture here of Baby Fae's stone. She's buried very close to us, right here in a nearby cemetery. And she's...
I think that's what her family had wanted. They felt she was as much a part of Loma Linda as she was a part of them. And we'd talked about that a number of times. So Baby Fae forever will be linked to Loma Linda University.
Where are we now with infant heart transplants 20 years later?
Oh, what a legacy. They're being done all around the world now, largely emanating from this university. We have still done the largest number of infants and babies. We've done 100 newborns, and even 100 newborns. Isn't that great?
That's wonderful.
And well over 400, about 450 or so transplants in infants and children. And the really neat thing is that their survival patterns are the best in transplantation history.
Because they get it at such an early stage.
They get it early. Their little soft immune systems aren't really all stimulated and revved up yet. And we're able to trick it easier than in a grown-up. And 3/4 of them are alive at 18 years out.
Another part of your activity has been working with the International Heart Team, teaching surgeons around the world. Talk a bit about that experience.
Well, I got introduced to that. In fact, that's probably what brought me into the idea of surgery and cardiac surgery. A friend of mine, Ellsworth Wareham, who was the original chief of heart surgery here at Loma Linda, had taken a group in 1962 out around Pakistan and southern Asia to do open heart surgery in that early era in children in less developed countries.
And
an amazing feat, really, when you think about it.
Quite primitive surgical conditions, I would think.
Well, they were, but here's this team from Loma Linda, blessed again, and because of our relationships, north and south, to be able to go to Pakistan and do 40-some-odd open heart operations without mortality in 1962 was a miracle. to this day. It's a stunning achievement. And it's the legacy that Dr. Wareham will leave forever after around the world. I got really enamored of that, and I've had the opportunity to travel around the world and do that sort of thing under the guise, under the umbrella of Loma Linda International Heart Institute and the overseas heart surgery team. And I personally have been more blessed, I'm sure, than the people and where we go. It's been a great experience.
And that's done two things. One, provided children and infants, or early children, with heart surgery they couldn't get at home, but also it has a training component. Talk about that.
Oh, absolutely. I just had an email from Bhagwan. Bhagwan was a youngster training in surgery in Kathmandu when we were last over there about 10 years ago. In Nepal. And he had gotten some training over in Bangladesh, of all places. But we were able to help him get going. We went over there, we've been over there 3 different times operating with him and helping give him the courage to do it by himself. Then we were able to arrange for him to go from Kathmandu to Toronto to be with one of our graduates who's the chief up at Toronto Sick Kids right now, and spend a little over a year up there in training as well. Now Bhagwan operates every day in Kathmandu. They never had anything like that in the country of Nepal. 22 million people unserviced for cardiac surgery. Several teams had come and gone over there, but they never had an established program until Bhagwan, and he was perfect for the role.
Why is that?
Oh, he's a selfless, wonderful little Nepalese guy that you can't help but love the moment you get introduced to him. And he understands how to get things done in a country like Nepal. And now he's like an icon in Nepal, of course, because he's the show in heart surgery over there. One of these days we're going to get a chance to go back over and play with him in the operating room again.
You've had your own struggles, your own setback, a bout with cancer a couple years ago. What has that meant to your life?
Well, it was a stunning event in my life, but it was very reassuring in many ways as well. I came to terms with several notions. One is that life had been good, and if this was the end of it, that was all right with me. Beyond that, I sensed a rallying of people that I hold dear in this community. And I sensed another sort of miracle in my life. It was a reassuring thing to me that God is a compassionate God. He must have something more for me to do. I'm still here talking with you, which is a wonderful thing. And I think largely it was a learning experience in my life. It helps me not to take things for granted so much.
A sense of gratitude for what you have been able to do and what you enjoy on a daily basis.
Well, I hope that the best is yet to come. In many ways, I think it might be.
Why is that?
Oh, there are a whole lot of things on the horizon that I still have the ability to be a part of. And I'm quite keen
What's on the horizon?
to do that yet. Oh, the things that we're doing in baby heart surgery and that sort of thing are so... They're little miracles in themselves. I keep using that word, but that's really what it amounts to. To take babies with twisted arteries and veins and turn them all around and expect them to survive and grow up and do well. That's what it's about today. 20 years ago, it was good enough if they survived the experience of having their heart fixed. Today, we're looking for them to become long-range citizens of the planet. And there are a whole lot of ways in which that can be enhanced and made better. So in my profession, that's one thing I'm looking forward to. And beyond my profession, there are some things in arts and literature and so forth that I want to get involved with.
Well, let's talk about that. You work with Starling's Law every day in surgery. How does that apply to life, your own life?
Well, as with Starling's Law, you don't want to stretch it out too far. you sort of have to know the limits. One of the joys in my life is that people have rallied around and have taken up the slack all around the edges, and so it hasn't been that stressful for me, I don't think. If you talk with Nancy or our boys or something, they might have a slightly different take on that. But it's been largely an enriching life, and because everyone's participated all up and down the line.
So how do you keep your life in balance and not get overcommitted? Because there's so much to do. There's so many babies that need surgery.
Well, I think some of it is just delegation of responsibility. Some of it is helping others come along. We've just hired a bright new young person in the industry, and we can groom him along. When I finish up, and that'll happen not too far from now, I'd like to think that I can step out of that and not be noticed. That void will just all fill right in immediately. And I think we're setting it up so that'll be true, that I can go off then and do some other things that are important to me.
What are those?
Well, I'd like to do a little writing. I have an artistic talent as well, and I'd like to develop that a little bit more. And a few other little things that are fun for me.
What do you write about?
Family. Well, some of it I'd like to just write a little bit about my own personal experience in life and what that's meant. I think some might find that interesting. I've had an awful lot of interesting experiences with this process. Met wonderful people that I've stayed in touch with ever since. And I'd like to say something about it, that it would be, others could identify with it, I think. And then I think there is even room for some fiction, where you could almost take it to another level carefully, and not have to stay right within the truth of the matter, but explore a little bit.
Get to the emotional truth, or the spiritual truth of the matter.
There's a whole host of things, I think, waiting to do. Things that maturity and old age can even enhance. Whereas in the world of baby surgery, I'm going to reach a point, by the time I'm 68 or 70 years old, I probably shouldn't be muttering in it anymore. It's still pretty good right now. At least that's what my colleagues tell me.
One night I got a page. It was late at night. You were doing surgery on a little girl from China, the only child of parents who couldn't have a second child. And the surgery was going slower, and I guess there was some problems, some nodules in the heart. But then I got late at night the page. She looks beautiful. Her lips are pink, her fingers are pink, and I saw that little girl down having lunch down in the cafeteria about a week afterwards, and she was scurrying around her mother. She still had some IVs in her, but she was scurrying around. And she was a little girl that to that point could not walk more than a few steps and would have to ask her mother to pick her up. That resulted in her parents making a commitment to the Lord. They were baptized before they left Loma Linda. Have you heard anything more about this?
No, but as has happened in my own life, I don't think any of us understand how far all this reaches for good. I think it's good enough to just know that it does. But stories like that are wonderfully enriching stories, it seems to me. I can't possibly keep track of all of it. God helped us find a way that night. And there's a family that's been transformed as a result.
That's right.
And that's really what...
Yeah, that's right. And it meant so much to them because they couldn't have possibly had that surgery done in China. And I understand that China Airlines actually donated the tickets for the whole family to be able to come over, and the Chinese church was very involved here. The local Chinese church was involved in supporting the family during that time. When you look back over your career, what stands out as something that you really are gratified about?
I don't know that there's any one thing, Lisa. I think on balance it's the sum total of it, and where it's been and where it might yet go, that is gratifying to me. It's hard for me to pick out just one event or one job. There's so many. I've been so blessed in this life. that it would be wrong probably for me to try to pick one that was just more than any of the others.
I have to tell you one more story that I'm sure you don't know about. My friend Diane Mitzelfelt was working in medical supplies some years ago, and she said she was pushing a big cart because someone had forgotten to take a cart down. They had to have it right away, so she was pushing one of these big supply carts. As she pushed it, the elevator door opened, and one of the wheels caught in the elevator door at the bottom. And it started to tip over, and she said she looked up and she saw 3 medical students. They were all looking at her with their hands in their pocket. She said they all looked like, "We're too high and mighty to touch us." And then she heard a voice say, "Hold it just a moment and let me get the wheel." And she didn't see who it was, but she saw a hand go out, grab the wheel, put it underneath, and pull it in. And when she stood up to look around and see who it was you. And she said that that was such a testament that you had a sense of service, even in the small things.
I have a lot of friends who push carts and make food. All those people are so vital to all of us that those medical students will soon learn. Part of their maturation will be to understand that piece of it, that the folks that sweep the floors are as important to their lives as anybody else.
There's somebody watching who has a dream for doing something innovative, like you did with Baby Fae so many years ago. What would you say to that person?
I would say this, and it's interesting you bring this up. I got a call this week from Laurie West, an MD PhD up in Toronto, an international figure right now in transplantation immunology. And she's been asked by an organization that brings carefully chosen college students into Washington each year for a meet and greet arrangement and then a dinner, sort of celebrating their achievements. But she's been asked to be the keynote speaker for that. She wanted to know what she should speak about. Well, she's good on her feet, so she didn't need my advice really. She's just calling to chat, I think, largely. But what I left her with is the way I'll answer that, and that is that she should encourage them to take a chance, to be willing to press the envelope a little, to not be constrained by what is in their lives, but what might be, and to have the courage to just step slightly over it in rational ways to take us to another and better place in our view of life on the planet. And if she can get that message across to even one of them, I think it'd be worth their coming to hear her talk. Now, she's got a lot of other wonderful things to say, but that's what I would answer that with. Take a chance.
To take a chance and not be constrained by what is, but to press on to what might be. We've been speaking with Dr. Leonard Bailey, Chairman of the Department of Surgery at Loma Linda University, celebrating the 20th year anniversary of the surgery of Baby Fae. I'm Lisa Beardsley, and stay with us for more on Faith at Work.